What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I am Elliot Harrison, your host. We're looking at, we think the league's hierarchy, although that's hard to say. I'm joined as always with Marcus Mosher, or by Marcus Mosher. And dude, how do you say league hierarchy after this week? What are there any good football teams in the NFL? Is it just all parity at this point?
No, we have good teams. We got to remember, just because you lose a game doesn't all of a sudden mean that you're a bad team. Losses happen. Teams aren't going to go 15-1. I guess it would be 16-1 now. So it's okay to lose some games. It's just, how do you respond to those losses? I think we're going to learn a lot about like the Rams this week, the Cowboys, Buffalo. We still have some good teams, Elliot.
So, losing, say, 30-0 in the second half in front of your home crowd. Totally normal.
Hypothetically,
totally.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, we saw this happen last year with Tampa Bay, right? They got blown out by the Saints twice. We saw the Packers get killed in a game where they lost by, 35 points last year? And those two teams still went to the NFC Championship game. So it's just one game of 17. Let's not overreact, and let's not make dramatic changes in our power rankings based off of one event.
So being a Super Bowl contender with the front runner for MVP and losing in Jacksonville, totally normal.
No, I'm not saying it's normal. I'm just saying It happens, right? This is the way the NFL is.
Speaking of abnormal, that's a mediocre segue start. Monday night game, Bears, Steelers.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring this game up.
I just we need to talk about it, right? The calls in the game, there are a lot of bad ones. I think the one that everyone's really circling, although there were multiple calls, is the one with Cassius Marsh, where he got called for taunting, and then it looked like Tony Correnti bumped him a little bit, although I think it's a little bit of a Twitter overreaction, something to scream about. He threw the flag on Cassius Marsh, not for contact with the official. Let's first make that clear. He threw it for taunting the Steelers bench.
Yep.
But he waited to throw that flag until after he had bumped Cassius Marsh. So I think there's a little bit of confusion on that. It was a horrible call. I don't know, though, Marcus, that we can definitively say, man, the Bears played winning football Monday night. They got robbed. I don't know. I think the Bears probably should have won the game, but I don't think either team played particularly well.
I'll say the Bears got robbed because that wasn't the only call that went against them. I mean, they had 5 or 6 plays off the top of my head where, big plays that, resulted in points, either being taken off the board or the Steelers getting points. I mean, I don't know if the Bears played winning football, but the Steelers certainly didn't either. It took 2 turnovers. It took 125 penalty yards for them to win that game, on a last-second field goal. So I don't know. I think if you're a Bears fan today, you are very, very upset with the way that game was officiated last night.
I would be upset with the way the game was officiated. I would not be pounding my chest saying, man, we played great football. We deserve it.
No. I think that's fine. However, I thought Justin Fields played really well in the second half. And I think you really wanted him to win that game. He had a 75-yard touchdown drive to take the lead in that game with a minute left. You want him to win those games and experience what it's like to have a come from behind win like that. To get it stolen from you a little bit is frustrating.
The Bears offense certainly didn't look good in the first half, and Pittsburgh went right down the field on their I believe their opening drive. Like I said, I think the officiating, obviously leaves a lot to be desired. The Bears certainly could have gotten out of there with a W, but if I'm a Bears fan, I know my team's not going anywhere. I already know this. What I like is that Justin Fields looks a little bit better than he did against San Francisco. And against San Francisco, he looked a little bit better, or a lot better than he had previously.
And I agree with you. I don't think the Bears are going anywhere. However, you win that game and you're at 4-5, you're not out of the NFC wildcard race at all. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the 5, 6, 7 seed, or probably just, the 6 and 7 seed in the NFC are going to be not good teams. So if you can get to 8 wins, you could theoretically get into the playoffs. And I think that's a game last night, Chicago, at the end of the year, might be really regretting not winning.
I agree. If you get to 8 wins, this is something I've told you the whole year. I think we're going to have an 8-9 team make the playoffs, and that might be the Bears. But if they go and play a wild card and lose 17-3, I don't really know how much that does for you in
Well,
an expanded playoff format.
The thing is, they don't have the first round pick anyway. So why not try to get some playoff experience and big game experience for Justin Fields? It's not going to hurt you at all.
I certainly wouldn't want to lose that game, either. We've got rankings to do. There's a lot I could tell you about teams that have had games like this that came back from it. I'm thinking of one in particular, came back and made the playoffs and made a little tiny run. But let's talk about a team that's not going to make any run whatsoever. Let's start with the rankings. Number 32. I don't know how else to put this. I was honest with Marcus. Marcus makes fun of me because I usually watch the most garbage game of the week. I didn't see any offensive plays of the Houston Texans. And I didn't even know that Tyrod Taylor played in this game until I talked to Marcus, and then I went and looked into the game. But it was one of the crap games when they're in the early window. It's hard to see them all, and then as you're trying to catch up with what you didn't see, clearly Texans at Dolphins is going to be the lowest on your priority list. Now that I did, the defense got 5 takeaways and only allowed 262 yards and lost. How does that happen?
First and foremost, if Elliot Harrison won't even watch your game, it's a really bad one. It's just I actually think it says more about Miami, who we can get to right now. Their offensive line is atrocious. I think it's the worst in football. I don't know how you evaluate anybody in that Dolphins team, including Jacoby Brissett, who played last week, Tua, the receivers, because the offensive line is just falling apart around the quarterbacks. Both of these teams are just completely awful. And I agree with you, having them at 32 and 31.
Oh, Brissett's probably going to play this week. I mean, they're
a train wreck.
I would say they're in trouble. They've been in trouble for a while, but they do have 2 wins, which Detroit doesn't. They were on a bye. Not a lot to say here. All I'd like to say about the Lions, we can move on, is they're the only 0-16 team in history, and they could become legitimately the second. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did go winless in 76 when they were an expansion team. They went 0-14. They didn't play 16 games then. Incidentally, the Bucs went 0-26 before they won 2 games. But the Lions have a very good chance of being winless. I just think that's remarkable. Unless you have anything to say on Detroit, I think we can go to New York.
You don't think they're going to get an upset win in Pittsburgh this week?
No. All right. Jets. We talked about this game on our Friday pod. That was a really good pod. Probably my favorite, one of my favorites that we've done. Marcus went through his top 25 receivers of all time. We're going to do the second part of that. It's really a top 50 list. I talked about Josh Johnson, how impressed I was with him, but this is another team that's going nowhere.
The defense is just so incredibly bad. They've given up at least 30 points in back-to-back weeks. They're not creating pressure at all. Robert Saleh's really got to figure that out sooner rather than later.
I know a team that misses Robert Saleh. We're going to get to that. Carolina, they're bad. That's what I'm going to say about Carolina. They played terrible against Atlanta. They didn't play well against New England. I don't know where this team is going. Sam Darnold, I guess the first 3 weeks were an aberration. Yep. Marcus, I don't know what this team really has to look forward to right now. And now there's these rumors about Matt Rule maybe leaving for the college ranks.
So if you are a Panthers fan and you're watching that game on Sunday against Mac Jones, don't you kind of regret passing on Mac Jones, then watching Justin Fields on Monday Night Football in the second half? You have both of those guys just fall to you in the draft, and yet they pass on him. They try to, ride with Sam Darnold. I think the Panthers are going to be back into the quarterback market in 2022.
I'll do you one better. What if you happen to be watching the highlights of the Cowboys-Broncos game after you're done watching your team's debacle and saw Teddy Bridgewater throw some dimes against the Cowboys?
Well, and he was far cheaper, right? You could have got Bridgewater for a 6th-round pick, and you wouldn't have had to give up 3 picks to go get Sam Darnold. I just never understood that.
Officially declare we've spent too long on Carolina. Okay, Jacksonville got a big win against Buffalo. We talked about this offline. I actually had Jacksonville originally over Washington. I don't think I could do that yet because this team needs to prove something. I think their defense proved a lot. And by the way, Marcus, I don't know if you heard this. It's really funny. It's a knee slapper. Did you know the Jags have a player named Josh Allen, and he did things to the Bills' Josh Allen?
Yes, I did.
Sorry.
The Jags' Josh Allen is actually very, very good. He's had a heck of a year so far for them. He's by far their best defensive player. So it was cool to see him get some national attention this week.
It's just when you call me a nerd for liking Star Trek, there's nothing nerdier than watching every broadcaster go, "Oh, Josh Allen on Josh Allen crime."
That was so cool.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. Oh, yeah, I'm like, this isn't funny, guys. It's wow.
It's like middle school humor, right?
It's
whatever.
It's worse than dad jokes. Enough already. We get it. Actually, I did like Josh Allen, the picture of him as Michael Jordan from The Last Dance. I thought that was funny.
I liked it.
Washington was a bye team. Not a lot to say here, other than maybe their close loss to the Broncos doesn't look as bad. That's I watched a lot of that game. They had chances in that game, but obviously Washington was off. They've looked a little better. I thought their defense played well a few weeks ago against Green Bay. We'll see where they end up. Atlanta. Impressive win. This is a team, arguably, Marcus, if you would have said, hey, they need to be higher, I would maybe agree with you.
Matt Ryan has a quarterback rating of 106 since week 3. He's played really well this season, despite losing offensive linemen, Calvin Ridley leaving for an extended period of time. I think you can make a case that Falcons should be in the low 20s and not at 25.
Only alarming thing, they still have a really hard time running the football, man. They're averaging 3.4 yards a carry, and
isn't Cordero Patterson, though, one of the coolest stories of the season, though?
Oh, he is, and he made a big play in that game. He put on some size, too, to play running back. He's looking pretty big, that guy. Okay, Philadelphia at 24. Speaking of running the football, talk about a team that's flipped the script, 176 yards this week, 236 the last time out. And Philadelphia is started to actually believe in handing the ball off. I know they had a tough loss here. There were rumors that Jeffrey Lurie didn't want the Eagles running the ball and that caused strife with Doug Peterson. I don't really buy that, but here we are with Philadelphia suddenly believing in trying to run.
Their biggest problem right now is over the last month, they're allowing an 80% completion percentage on defense. That is awful. Their secondary is just not playing well. Darius Slay is dealing with a hamstring injury. If they can't slow down quarterbacks at all, they're going to have no chance the rest of the season.
I agree with you there. The Bears, we already talked about a little bit with the Monday night game. I think we saw improvement from Justin Fields.
Should be encouraged.
Defense.
Should be encouraged.
Yeah, and one other point on that, huge special teams play in the fourth quarter of that game. That'll do a lot for a team like this. If there's a team that needs its special teams to come out and ball out, it's the Chicago Bears. But right now, I feel comfortable with them here, Marcus. They just lost to my 22nd ranked team, which are the 49ers last week. So I honored that. But the 49ers looked terrible Sunday.
Is this the most disappointing team in the NFL right now?
Yes.
Like, you had a game perfectly lined up for you at home against the Cardinals without Kyler Murray, without DeAndre Hopkins, without J.J. Watt, and you lay an egg. Like, that game was over quick. Like, the Cardinals just destroyed them. I think Kyle Shanahan needs to be on the hot seat a little bit because outside of that 2019 season, this team has not been good at all.
I told you last week, the 49ers secondary statistically looks good, but they can easily be beat because they're not good. Colt McCoy went 22 of 26 for 249. That's almost 10 yards an attempt. Every time he throws the football. Unbelievable. Seattle, another bye team. They get Russell Wilson back. I didn't move them up. Anything you want to add here on the Seahawks other than Russell Wilson's coming back? Because I don't think we really know what this football team is.
No, even when this team had Russell Wilson, they had a lot of holes on defense. They weren't running the ball particularly well. I know Wilson's going to help them, but I'm just not sure it's going to be enough to make them a legitimate NFC contender.
The Minnesota Vikings, I don't know how much of a contender they are. They're at 20 right now. I could have moved them lower. Look, they had trouble closing out the game against the Cardinals. They had the missed field goal early in the year. They had trouble, obviously, against Dallas and Cooper Rush. They play a tough game against Baltimore, but they can't win in overtime there either.
They're really good at playing up to their opponents, but they just can't find ways to win these games. And I don't know if it's a Kirk Cousins issue. Is it a Mike Zimmer philosophy thing? But it's becoming way too common in Minnesota.
New Orleans at 19, another difficult team. We talk about this every week with New Orleans. Yep. I am not a Trevor Siemian hater. I don't think he has been bad for that team. They made it close. This was his first start for the team. He got thrust into action against Tampa Bay. They can go back to Taysom Hill at this point. Not really sure if they will. What do you think?
I think they should go to Taysom Hill. I think they should go to Taysom Hill because at least it gives you something different. I think Simeon is fine if you need him for a half. or whatever, but he's not a long-term starter. Taysom Hill is at least different. He's weird. It makes you have to defend a different style of football. I think they should go to Hill.
That's interesting. It's kind of like putting Sam Neill in an action star role. You know, you don't really think of Sam Neill as like an action star, but then it worked in Jurassic Park, right? You know?
Sure. I mean, it's almost a little bit like what the Dolphins did to get this back to football, like in 2008 with the Wildcat, right? Just it's different. Yeah, it's not going to be good enough to win you playoff games, but the goal for the Saints is just get into the playoffs and see what's going to happen. And I think Taysom Hill probably gives them the best chance to do so.
Yeah, to get this back to football, I thought Sam Neill was a good number 2 in The Hunt for Red October when he played Sean Connery.
It's your favorite movie, by the way, of all time. Yeah, just letting the people know.
Event Horizon was a terrible movie. It was like a horror sci-fi.
Yeah.
And he was the lead guy. I think it was with Lawrence Fishburne. Can you think of any other Sam Neill movies that you'd like to throw
We're spending way too much time on this. We need to move on to the Giants, who are your number 18 team.
Yeah, and so I thought you would think this was too high. You've been notoriously tough on these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I defended them a little bit too, saying, look, they are playing hard for Joe Judge. I think they've proven that the last couple of weeks, or do you think this is all just an aberration?
A little bit. They got 3 turnovers in this game, one of which was on like the 5-yard line right at the end of the game. The Raiders missed a 25-yard field goal. Daniel Jones had 67 air yards in this game, which is absurdly low.
Yes.
They're fine. I think they're probably going to end up with 6 or 7 wins, but right in the middle of the league.
I just admire the way they've competed when everyone thought the season was absolutely just, you know, not only washed, but literally where this team may not win a game the rest of the year. After
no, they're not that bad. They're way more talented than that.
A team they lost to early in the year were the Denver Broncos. That's when the Broncos got up to the 3-0 start. I've got them all the way up. They're tied with a couple other teams. My biggest mover from 25 to 17, so 8 spots. I thought the Broncos earned this by the way they played against Dallas. They did win last time out against Washington. They put a couple of wins together here after trading Von Miller.
Yeah, best team in the league, in my opinion, with the way they dominated the Cowboys. I've never seen the defense play better than that. No, I think they had a great game plan. Dallas was just off. Hey, they ran the ball really well. Bridgewater made some incredible throws. I think it's going to be a team that's just going to hang around for the rest of the season.
I think you got to give the Broncos credit here. You know,
I just did. I said they played a really good game and they ran the ball well.
I mean, for anyone, you know, you could say it's an aberration game for the Cowboys, but that was a butt kicking. There was nothing fluky. There was nothing. The Broncos made the Cowboys look bad. The Cowboys didn't make the Cowboys look bad. Teddy Bridgewater was on point with some of his throws. I thought he played great. I see you making faces over there.
Dallas dropped a bunch of passes. I don't know. I think it was a lot of what Dallas
dropped
did.
A few. They dropped some contested balls where the Broncos corners made some great plays. I thought too. Not giving
Denver
up.
Played well. Listen, can't take anything away from Denver. They played well.
Ball skills go both ways, my friend. Okay, let's look at the next batch of teams here, starting with number 16. Because I'm tired of talking about that Broncos-Cowboys game. So let's talk about a game we already talked about, Pittsburgh-Chicago. Pittsburgh did not look good in this game. You could make the point they deserved to lose. I don't know if I would go that far. The Bears did have a lot of penalties outside of the bad calls, but Pittsburgh didn't play well. I can tell you that right now. They may not have deserved to lose, but they certainly didn't deserve to win. So I really, I just couldn't give the Steelers a lot of credit for a win here.
Pittsburgh is 5-0 in 1-score games this year. I think there's going to be some regression to the mean in the second half of the season, but their schedule's pretty easy going forward. They play Detroit this week at home. I think this is going to be a team that gets to 6-3, 7-3, and it's probably going to end up making the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about them getting to 6-3 a couple of weeks ago. By the way, I have Pittsburgh down a spot, so I actually punished them even though they won, putting that in air quotes. The Raiders, I also dropped as well. Now, the Raiders beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Was that Pittsburgh's last loss? I think it might have been.
No, they lost to the Packers a week later.
That's right. They lost the Packers, and then they went on a run where they beat the Broncos, they beat the Steelers, the Browns, and then they beat the Bears. The Raiders right now, what can you say about everything going on with this organization? They've now released their other number 1 pick. There's just so much I don't want to call it dysfunction because teams miss on first round picks, Marcus, but to lose 2 first round picks this quickly and lose your head coach this year. You've got the GM basically publicly saying, look, I did as much research as I could and I really screwed up. I don't know, but maybe that was a John Gruden pick. You know, do we really know? Was that a Mike Mayock?
Yeah, I think it was
flag?
A little bit of both. The Raiders made 5 picks in the top 100 in last year's draft, and only 1 player's left, and it's Bryan Edwards. They had 2 guys they drafted in the 3rd round that never even played a snap for them before they moved on. So their drafting has been awful. I know they lost on Sunday. I still believe in this team quite a bit. That was just a tough spot for them to be in with the Henry Ruggs thing that happened in the middle of the week, Damon Arnett's thing that happened on Saturday morning with him flashing some guns on Instagram. Plus, you go to the East Coast and play a 1 p.m. kickoff. I think they're better than what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, incidentally, Bryan Edwards has actually turned out to be a pretty decent player for where they drafted him for that team. But unfortunately, it's not about where you get 3rd and 4th round picks. It's about what you do with your 1st round picks. Kansas City Chiefs at 14. I've left the Chiefs in the same spot. I really don't know what to do with this team right now. To me, Marcus, they are the quintessential mediocre football team. They could have lost that game Sunday. Yeah. You know, you could say, well, their defense played well. They were playing Jordan Love in his first start ever, and Jordan Love looked a little overmatched. The offense still looks terrible. They come out looking okay, and then it just turns into Patrick Mahomes trying to make plays in schoolyard ball.
So, you know, one of my favorite stats for a quarterback is yards per attempt. Since week 3, only 2 quarterbacks have a worse yards per attempt than Patrick Mahomes. Zach Wilson and can you guess the other one? Sam Darnold. That's it.
I got it.
You got it. That is it. That is the list. I mean, it's Mahomes is not just playing poorly for his standards. He's playing poorly when you judge him up, you know, next to all the other quarterbacks in the league. I just don't know if this offense is going to get fixed anytime soon.
The Cincinnati Bengals are a really tough one for me. I believed in them in the beginning of the year. I didn't think they were going to be as good as they turned out being. Now they're kind of, as you like to say, regressing to the mean. This is 2 losses in a row now where this team has not looked good. You could call the Jets game an aberration, anomaly. I'm trying to think of another synonym for kind of aberration, anomaly, and I can't right now. I'll let you do that. But, you know, maybe the Bengals aren't as good as we thought they were, and they're not as bad as that we thought they were at the beginning of the year. Maybe the Bengals are a 9-8 football team.
Yeah, they have the same problems every single week. They can't really protect Joe Burrow, and the tackling has gotten worse and worse by the week. I still think they're going to be okay because Burrow and Jamar Chase are phenomenal, but they're probably not an AFC juggernaut that we were maybe thinking they could be a couple weeks ago.
Well, they did a better job protecting Burrow when they kind of went on this little run. But, you know, one of the things about playing a young quarterback, and you remember, he didn't finish his rookie year, so he's midway through his 2nd year, but he doesn't have a lot of experience. Changing protections at the line and things like that comes with experience. And that's not going to be something that he's great at. He's got good accuracy. I still think Joe Burrow is a heck of a football player. But I wonder what the Bengals are at this point. I actually moved them down substantially 5 spots this week. Okay, Indianapolis Colts are up there at number 12. The Colts have the potential to be really good. They were whipping the Jets. They slammed on the brakes Thursday night, Marcus. It was a little alarming how easily the Jets went down and scored on them. But I think if the Colts can put it all together, that this is a certifiable not only playoff team, but a team that can make a little run in the playoffs.
I just find it funny that we have a team here that's 4-5 after 9 games. And I don't disagree with you at all. Like when they're running the ball and they can stay balanced and the defense is playing well, this is a team that can play with just about anybody in the NFL. It's just, man, they are inconsistent. Carson Wentz, you just never know what you're going to get on throw from throw. I don't know. I have no idea where to rank this team.
Yeah, it's tough. Cleveland is not an easy team either. You know, Baker Mayfield is out there gutting it out. I think Baker Mayfield, by the way, deserves a little more credit for that. People are very, very hard on him. As someone who's had a shoulder injury, it is painful. It bothers you on everything that you do. It's something that needs to be fixed, and he's out there playing. And I also thought getting Nick Chubb back was good for them. I don't know how good this team is. I still think that they are a playoff team, but I might be a little high at number 11.
I don't know if you're too high. It's just we'll see. Their schedule is really difficult coming up. They played New England this week in New England, likely without Nick Chubb, who tested positive for COVID today, without John Kelly, another running back, without Demetric Felton, who also tested positive for COVID. It's just been a bad year of injuries and luck for the Browns. It seems like we say that every year, but man, I just don't know what to think about this team going forward.
I guess I should have been specific. Coming back from injury, not the COVID list.
Yeah.
We always have to differentiate between that. Did you see Chubb's run though, where he just exploded? Yep. When that guy, Mark, he is truly.
He looks healthy, right? He finally looks healthy for the first time, and now it's so unfortunate that he might miss this week's game. So
there's an old school running back he reminds me of, way old school. Wilbert Montgomery played for the Eagles. The style that he runs and the way he's able to explode. Do you think people are too hard on Baker?
No, he's a first round pick. He's a number 1 overall pick. He plays with a certain confidence and bravado. I don't know. I think he's fine. And I think when you're number 1 pick, you need to play like a top 5, top 10 guy. And too often we just don't see that from Baker.
By the way, I'm sitting on the squeakiest chair of all time, man. Like literally this thing, I need to like oil this thing. So I don't want you to think my, burrito didn't agree with me or something. Buffalo at number 10. I dropped Buffalo significantly. Marcus, they beat Miami. I'm doing this in air quotes here by multiple scores, but it was an ugly game that they did not play well. Then this week they lose to Jacksonville. Their offense does nothing. I've said this to you multiple weeks. I want to know where this Josh Allen MVP crowd is.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either. What's so frustrating about this team is I think Buffalo has a chance to be the most well-rounded team in the NFL. Like the defense is really good, or it can be really good. They've got playmakers all over the place. I think they can even run the ball when they want to. It's just we never really see them put it all together against a good team, and I'm starting to worry that we'll never see it at any point this year.
Yeah, I wonder how good they are. But when I say that, I mean, is this a legitimate Super Bowl team?
I don't know. How do you know? How do we know? We haven't seen it at any stretch this season yet.
That's right. I don't think of the Chargers as a Super Bowl team, yet I have them higher than Buffalo. So what I'm saying is basically I think the ceiling for Buffalo is higher than the Chargers this year.
Yes.
The Chargers gutted out a win on the East Coast against Philadelphia. I don't know that they were particularly impressive, but they did what they had to do to win, whether it was short passing game, whether it was defense getting some stops when they had to have it. What do you think of the Chargers right now?
Yeah, Bills, this is how you go on the road and win a game. You just figure out a way to get it done. You don't let them hang around. I know the Chargers, had the Eagles had a lead late in this game, but the Chargers basically controlled it throughout. I think the Chargers are really good. Not Super Bowl ready yet. The run defense is still absolutely awful, but they've got the right pieces in place to potentially make a run here over the next couple of months.
All right, let's get to our top 8 here. Again, Chargers and Bills. When you were wondering what they are, and then you get to my number 8 team, and it's like the Patriots.
Yeah.
Wow, I think this is the highest we've had the Patriots so far this year. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure we haven't had them as far as 8. But they earned this. They beat the Chargers a couple of weeks ago. They've absolutely looked better than the Bills. Even when Mac Jones hasn't played great, they've still been able to win. And I'm a Mac Jones fan. They can run the football. They can certainly play good defense. Do you have any problem with this?
Not at all. I think this team has like some early 2000 Patriots vibes, like 2002, 2003, where, listen, they're probably not going to blow anybody out. They're not going to have style points, but they're just going to find a way to win these games with their defense. They're going to run the ball, and the quarterback's going to make enough plays. I think if you're a team in the AFC, you should be really nervous about what the Patriots have done over the last month, because they're getting better and better every single week.
I don't know if I could say that about Baltimore, but I think Baltimore has much more upside than New England. And I don't know that New England could beat them head to head right now, matchup wise. The Ravens escaped with a win at home against the Vikings. And this wasn't, the Ravens starting Cooper Rush like the week before with the Cowboys. It's with Lamar Jackson at home. Disappointing performance in my mind for Baltimore, but they still got the win. That's the important thing. And hey, when you have the best kicker in the history of the game, that counts. Special teams counts, and the Ravens consistently win in that area.
Yeah, so going into this season, in the first 3 years of Lamar Jackson's career, he never had a game where they were down by a touchdown or more in the fourth quarter and they came back and won. It just didn't happen. The book on Lamar is get him out of his game script and they can't come back. Elliot, we've already seen 3 games this year where they've had a double-digit, deficit in the fourth quarter and they've come back to win. I think it just kind of shows you the improvements from Lamar Jackson. But you mentioned Justin Tucker. Like, how nice is it to just know if we cross the 50-yard line, we're in field goal range in overtime. And, we know we've got a shot to win every one of these games. I think this Baltimore team has a lot of flaws, but Lamar, Harbaugh, Tucker, they give you a lot of reasons to be optimistic about them.
If I was a contending team that was struggling with my field goal kicking and I thought I could win the Super Bowl, I'd trade a first-round pick for Justin Tucker right now.
Okay, but would Baltimore do that? Look how many games they've already won this year because Tucker's made big kicks.
I'm just saying, if you think you can win it all, you're giving up an end of the first-round pick, right?
All day.
And why not go for it? Dallas Cowboys are my 6th-ranked team. I didn't drop them below Baltimore because, frankly, I think the Cowboys have been a little bit better than they have. Just look at the Minnesota games. The Cowboys went to Minnesota with Cooper Rush, and they won. Baltimore was barely able to beat Minnesota with Lamar Jackson, but the Cowboys were absolutely awful this week. So, for me, the main thing is, was this just a one-off? Was it just an awful, awful game? You said it yourself. It's one of the worst games you've ever seen the Cowboys play at home. I can think of a couple that were this bad, but not many.
Yeah, and I think these teams have these games. We saw the Cowboys in 2018 have a stinker against the Colts where I think it was a 23-0 loss.
Yeah.
And they still made the playoffs. They still won a playoff game. It's okay. Now, the question is, do you let it linger? Does this carry over to week 10 when they play the Falcons? Do they get off to a slow start in that game? Another noon kickoff for them. We'll see, but I'm not overly concerned yet about Dallas.
Wasn't that Colts game in Indy?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I thought so. I can't remember a home game this bad since the Dave Campo era.
Oh, they've had them. They had a game against the Eagles a couple of years ago in 2017 where they lost 37-9 in a game that wasn't competitive. They had a game against the Chargers that same year where they got blown out. Yeah. So they've had these games before. We'll just see how they respond.
I don't know, man. That was awful. Los Angeles Rams didn't play well against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has proven themselves to be a good team, but the Rams did not play well. I dropped them, and I dropped them because we're at the cream of the crop here. So I dropped the Rams a good 4 spots off this game. A lot to carve up here, but one thing I want to make really clear is this is another game where the Titans, the worst call I saw the whole weekend was the Aaron Donald roughing the passer. That's the worst penalty I saw. I know the Bears-Steelers game's got everybody in a tizzy, but if you did not see Aaron Donald's roughing the passer call, it was horrible. And it was a huge play in the game, but I still think Tennessee deserved to win that game. I thought Tennessee just outplayed them at the point of attack.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing you're the most concerned about if you are a Rams supporter is they just dominated the trenches in this game. I mean, D'Amico Autry just killed the Rams.
Dude, they were all of them. I don't think anybody won their matchup.
And that's got to be concerning because when the Rams get into the playoffs against some of these other teams, Tampa Bay, who has a fantastic defensive line. We'll see about Dallas, who, they have Randy Gregory and about DeMarcus Lawrence. But if teams can really disrupt their offensive line and it throws off the timing for Matt Stafford in that offense, they can be in trouble.
Yeah. I thought the Tennessee Titans were going to be in trouble because of their secondary this year. They're my number 4 ranked team. Their secondary is held up. Bayard has played great. Of course, they're holding up because the pass rush is getting home so often, but those two work in conjunction with each other. It'll be interesting to see what the Titans now get from Adrian Peterson. Marcus, he got a few carries. They kind of got him warmed up. He got a touchdown against the Rams. I actually liked that acquisition, though. I thought that was the right move.
My question for you is, when are we going to start considering Mike Vrabel one of the better coaches in the league? Because he doesn't get mentioned in the same category as Bill Belichick and Andy Reid because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. But this Titans team has been competitive almost every year that he's been there. And they've beaten some really good teams. Like they beat Tom Brady in New England his last year there. And, they just find ways to win despite a bunch of injuries and things not going the right way. Vrabel's a pretty good coach.
Yeah, and they could have won this game more handily if AJ
Oh,
Brown didn't drop two third down
yep.
balls. I saw them bungle the clock management at the end of the Jets game and what they were settling for in terms of field goal. So maybe I'm being a little hard mentioning a
It's one
game
game. It's
from
one
a
game.
month ago. But hey, when you make mistakes like that, hopefully you learn from them, and the Titans will be better in the in-game
Yep.
scenario going forward. That was their last loss, incidentally, to the New York Jets, and
And
that
then they
was
lost in
with
week
Derrick
one,
Henry.
right? They lost
Yeah,
in week one to the Cardinals in a
got blown
game where,
out.
yeah, and they might have overlooked the Cardinals a little bit in that game, but Titans are a good team.
Tampa Bay Bucks are number 3. They were on a bye. Not a lot to say
Yep.
here. Obviously, they blew out Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and then they lost to New Orleans in kind of that crazy game with Trevor Siemian. I still believe in the Tampa Bay Bucks. I didn't want to move them on a bye, and they got some help. A lot of the big teams around them lost this week, but the one team that didn't lose to them lose this week was the Arizona Cardinals, who you mentioned. Boy, the 49ers could have circled this as a W. It didn't happen. Colt McCoy played great. I thought Connor played great. This seemed like the kind of game where really everyone on the team contributed.
Yeah, and I think they should be the number one team. I know they lost to the Packers on Thursday Night Football, and I get it, and we can talk about that. But when you do that on the road without your top two players, that's really impressive. And their only loss, Elliot, came on a play in which AJ Green left the controller unplugged. That's basically about it, right? Because otherwise they win that game. They had the ball on the 3-yard line. Cardinals probably should be 9-0 right now, and I think they're the best team in the league.
Yeah, but I can go the other way on that and say LaFleur beat his own team by not running AJ Dillon on 2 goal-to-go situations, including 4th and goal from the foot. So I thought the Cardinals got a little bit bailed out in that game, frankly, to be in the position for AJ Green. So I thought that evened out. Thankfully, it wasn't the penalties like it was with the Bears Steelers.
Listen, I just can't put Packers at number one after they are coming off a loss. That's all. That's more of a principle thing.
And I'm sure I'm the only one in the industry that did this, but here's what I saw. I saw a team that had a backup quarterback thrust into a circus, and have the defense hold the fort time and time and time again. If the defense plays like that, when Aaron Rodgers comes back and the running backs they have, they can win in cold weather games. I don't know what team is more balanced than they are offensively, defensively. The only one I can think of would be Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay is really good. And when Rodgers comes back, and he will probably this week, they're going to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFC. So I'm not going to say that they're not a good team. I do think you can beat them a little bit by running the ball. And it's just something that Kansas City can't do at all, so they couldn't expose them. I think you can beat them in the secondary now with Jair Alexander out. Again, I would have them 2 or 3, but I get why you have them at number 1. I'm okay with it.
And they beat Arizona when they didn't have their wide receivers. And that wasn't, look, if that was a month ago, man, that would be one thing.
It's just the Thursday night games are so random, Ellie. And you know that. They're weird. And that game was a coin flip.
Well, we'll see what Arizona can do. Okay. Kyler Murray, we'll see when he comes back, but maybe Colt McCoy could keep this up. I was actually really happy for Colt McCoy.
Yeah, he played a good game.
He played a really good game. I think he was 22 at 26 for 249. Definitely could see the argument, but you know what? If somebody made the argument to me right now, look, Tampa Bay at New Orleans was an aberration because it's always tough to play there, and Tampa Bay is now rested. They're actually the best team in the league. I think that's a good argument too. So that's how I see it. But just to go back over the top 8 here: Green Bay at 1, Arizona at 2, Tampa Bay at 3, Tennessee at 4, got the Rams at 5, Cowboys 6, Ravens 7, and the surprise, the New England Patriots in the top 8. But with that, Marcus, I will give you the last word.
AFC is just a mess right now. I mean, it seems like every week we have a new team that's number 1 in our power rankings in the AFC. We had the Bengals one week, we had the Ravens, we had the Bills, and now it's the Titans. And it wouldn't be surprised, Elliot, if it's somebody different this week. If the Patriots beat the Browns, this week, it wouldn't be shocking if you move them all the way up. So the AFC, we've got 8 weeks left to go. Can't wait to see how it plays out.
If you had to plant your flag right now and say this is going to be the top seed in the AFC, who's your team?
Baltimore.
Really?
Yeah. And I know they have huge flaws. Like the offensive line's not good. The secondary is awful. I think I just trust Lamar and Harbaugh more than any other quarterback head coach combo.
they're going to get one of your favorite players in the NFL back pretty soon.
Nick Boyle?
Nothing gets Marcus excited like a blocking tight end.
A 300-pound blocking tight end. I am so excited. Activated off the injured reserve list this week. Let's go.
You know, for the man who says running backs don't matter, but blocking TE2s matter very, very much.
Because you know why? Because if they block well, the running back doesn't matter. So that's exactly why I love Nick Boyle. And a 300-pound fullback in Patrick Ricard. Good player.
You done?
Yeah, we just finished the show talking about 600 pounds of beef on the offensive line.
Exactly. All right. We will see you guys on Thursday. We're going to be picking the games, and we'll do a Thursday night reaction on Friday. Thank you, as always, for joining us. You can hit Marcus up at Marcus_.
There you go.
Mosher and at Harrison NFL. We'll see you.